Okay, so attacks involving this is terrorist attacks involving gasoline or any kind of jet fuel or something like this. So hijack a plane and use it for a weapon like 9/11, as we already said, not likely. And the reason is, as we've already said, policy changes. You don't deal with hijackers. You have a sealed cockpit, self-policing by the passengers. All of these were mentioned, right? Well, what about stealing or buying a crop duster, filling it with fuel, and then dive bombing a target? So how likely is this? It's an attack involving gasoline, basically the energy stored in gasoline. How likely would something like this be? What makes it advantageous for the bad guys, and what makes it not so easy to do for the bad guys? Yeah, that's kind of funny, isn't it? A fully laden crop duster is far more difficult to fly than a big old jumbo jet. Not necessarily to land, but you don't need to land your big old jumbo jet if you're using it for a weapon. But these guys, they need to come in low. I mean, they're trying to hit, not World Trade Centers, they're trying to hit maybe a stadium or something. They're trying to fly under the radar so they don't get shot down. I mean, one of these things appears over New York City, somebody's going to be suspicious and it's going to get shut down. So they want to fly under the radar. It's hard to do that with these guys. Another safeguard, in a sense, is that the crop dusting community, it's small. There aren't a lot of crop dusters out there. It's close-knit. And even before 9/11, these guys were apparently really suspicious characters. You try to, photograph them in their plane, they come out and they don't like that. Maybe they think you're trying to enforce federal regulations on them. I don't know why, but it's a small community. They talk to each other. Somebody sells one of these planes or rents one of these planes. They're not going to do it easily, and they're going to be very suspicious and report things, for the most cases. Okay, somebody could always slip through the cracks, but in general, the contention is it doesn't happen so readily because it is a small, close-knit community. They talk to each other, and they're generally kind of suspicious. And then, as one already mentioned, crop dusters are more difficult to fly than large passenger jets. On the other hand, anybody can just buy any old plane, not necessarily a crop duster, and cram it full of fuel. Just get jerry cans, fill them with gasoline. That's easy to do. That's not illegal. And it doesn't even raise much of an eyebrow. If you're, in a farming area, you need lots of fuel. And fill this guy up and just pack it full. It's not going to have the 30 tons equivalent of TNT, but you could still do a fair amount of damage, I guess, with it. So that's something that the bad guys could do. The bottom line to remember on all this stuff is that fuel, like jet fuel, gasoline, etc., it's an extremely concentrated source of energy. That's great if you're trying to drive your car someplace. You don't need to refill your tank every 5 miles. But the bad news is it's a convenient source of energy for bad guys. And that's the downside of this great fuel that we've got in gasoline. So it's something we do have to maintain vigilance on, is the attacks using something like gasoline. Okay, so what about bombs in general? Forget about the planes for a moment. What about just bombs? Well, first of all, on planes. What about bombs on planes? Well, we screen, right? We have to take off our shoes. They x-ray things. Is that enough? Well, screening's always a threat. How can I say? Bombs on planes are always a threat. That's why I say sure. It's a problem. It's not easy because of all the screenings, but there's always a threat because explosives aren't easy to detect. You have plastic explosives and you go through an X-ray machine, it looks like plastic. Okay, it looks like Play-Doh essentially. It's hard to detect this stuff. Okay, it's not metal. A metal detector's not going to help. You go through an X-ray machine. Some guy's got like a bunch of stuff, looking weird stuff in the shoes that normally aren't in shoes. It's going to raise some suspicions, but in general, it's hard to detect this stuff. Good news is better detectors are being developed all the time, among other places here at K-State. In the nuclear engineering department, they're working on different ways of detecting more efficiently and inexpensively detecting explosives. But it just isn't easy. But what about bombs in checked luggage? I mean, carry-on is one thing, but checked luggage, it's kind of hard. It's even harder to detect this stuff. Okay? This comes back again to, if you check your bag and you're not on that plane, everything gets held up. Okay? You change your flight, if it's a legitimate thing or not, you cannot have luggage on the plane without the owner of that luggage on the plane. That can't happen. That's a policy issue. A post-9/11 policy issue, I think. Okay? Does that prevent a suicide guy? No. But once again, you're hoping the bad guys won't do that because they use up their most talented people in a suicide mission. What about bombs on the ground? Sure, this can happen. I mean, as recently as the Boston Marathon, and it was pretty horrific. And nothing like 9/11, but it was pretty horrific. You don't want to understate the terrible consequences of something like that. But it could be even worse. The bad guys, I mean, this was unorganized, right? This was apparently, nobody's been convicted of anything yet, but apparently, or allegedly, it was a couple brothers that were, trying to do something. And you can imagine the bad guys trying to do something far more organized than that and really causing even more problems.